Good morning, everybody. What's meant by sex-linked traits? Sex-linked traits is a somatic trait that their gene located on the sex chromosome. Which kind of sex chromosome is the X chromosome? Why? Because the X chromosome is carrying some somatic trait plus the trait responsible for the sex character. What are the examples of sex-linked traits? The eye color of Drosophila insect, and in human being, color blindness, hemophilia, and we will study it in this lesson in details. Also, short-sightedness, and short-sightedness is the ability of the person to see the near object, but he can't see the far object. Muscle atrophy, and the muscle atrophy, here the power of the muscle and the thickness of the muscle is decreased, and this disease is a harmful one. First, we will study the sex-linked trait in Drosophila insect. This insect has two kinds of color in her eye: the red eye character and the white eye character. The red eye character is a dominant trait, and the white eye character is a recessive trait. If crossing occurs between an insect with a female insect with red eye and a male insect with white eye, the first generation will have one red eye. I mean 100% of the first generation will have a red eye, and this is similar to the Mendelian character. While the second generation will be 75% red and 25% white, and this is also similar to Mendelian character. Here, crossing occurs between a red eye female, but here the female is hybrid. That means it has one dominant gene only, and the second gene is recessive. So we write the genotype X R capital, X R small. And it crossed with a red eye male, and here the male is presented with the red eye with one dominant gene only on the X chromosome. So the genotype will be XR capital Y. What about the generation? 3 of the generation will have a red eye, and 1 will have a white eye. The red eye, 2 will be females, one of them pure and one of them hybrid, and 1 of the red eye will be a male, and the white eye is male. So the ratio 3:1 is similar to Mendelian, but here, because this gene is carried on the X chromosome, the white eye always be a male. Here the recessive gene appear in the male more than in female, because in male it represented only by one gene, but in female it should be presented by 2 recessive genes. What about the color blindness? The color blindness is a genetic disease where the eye can't differentiate between red color and green color. If you have a color blindness, you can't read the numbers inside the red circle and in the green circle. But if you can recognize the number well, be sure that you don't have a color blindness. The case of color blindness is caused by a recessive gene, and this gene is sex-linked, so it will be carried on the X chromosome. We have 3 phenotypes for color blindness: healthy person, which is completely normal, and infected person that has color blindness, and a carrier. but the carrier state present only in female. What about the genotype of the healthy person? In male, the male healthy person have one dominant gene carried on the X chromosome, while the female healthy person has two dominant genes on both X chromosomes. What about the infected one? The infected male carry the recessive gene on the X chromosome, and only one gene is enough to appear the character, while the female carried two recessive genes, and this character to be presented in female needs the presence of the two recessive genes. What about the carrier? The carrier state present in female only because the female carry two genes, and this is hybrid one, where she had a dominant gene and a recessive gene. Each gene carried on X chromosome. Here, crossing occurs between a female carrier, that means she is hybrid, and each X chromosome carried the normal gene, which is C capital, and the other carried the affected gene, which is C small. This crossing occurs with infected male. I mean that it carried the gene of color blindness, which is the recessive one carried on the X chromosome. So its genotype will be XC small Y. After crossing, we will have a carrier female XC capital XC small, and infected female XC small XC small, a healthy male which is XC capital Y, and infected male which is XC small Y. Here we can conclude that the infected male one is taking his gene from his mother. Why? Because the male take from the father the Y chromosome, while the X chromosome is taken from mother. So the mother transmits the gene to her son. What about the infected female? The infected female carry the gene from her mother and from her father. What about the carrier female? The carrier female takes the infected gene from her father. So the father will transmit the gene to his daughter, but never transmit the gene to his son. The other case is the hemophilia. Hemophilia also a recessive gene that carried on X chromosome. But what's meant by hemophilia? It's a genetic disease where the blood liquidity is increased. We mean here that the blood will be similar to the water in its liquidity, and it may lead to severe bleeding, and actually in severe cases it will lead to death. Why hemophilia occurs, or why this blood liquidity occurs? Due to lack of clotting factor, and as you know, clotting factor is the factor responsible for blood clotting to stop bleeding. Let's have a look on the phenotype and genotype on male and female. The healthy male is XY, and the X carry the dominant gene, which is XH capital, and the female XX, and both X carry the capital H gene, which is the dominant gene, while the carrier present only in female, where the female is hybrid, carrying one dominant gene and one recessive gene. So her genotype would be XH capital, XH small. The infected male will carry only one gene, which is the recessive gene, and the trait appears in male in presence of one gene only, while in female the trait needs two genes recessive to appear. So the genotype of the female will be XH small, XH small. Here crossing occurs between a carrier female and a healthy male. Both of them have no hemophilia because the carrier is phenotypically normal but genotypically carry the gene of hemophilia, and the male is completely healthy. What about the offspring? The offspring will be two normal female, one of them is completely healthy and the other is carrier. What about the male? One of them will be healthy and the other is infected. Why? Because the mother transmits the gene to her son. So, in sex-linked trait, father will pass the gene to his daughters and never pass the gene to his son. Mother passed the gene to her sons and her daughters. The sex-linked traits are common in male because it's a recessive trait and the male carry one gene only, so it will be easier to the trait to appear. Thank you very much and see you soon.